Welcome to the start of another week, another walkie talkie. The weather's a bit dodgy today, so this time I'm on with the umbrella after yesterday. That was a bit of a debacle. So, there we go. Just remembering I have brought my wallet with me. I need to do a stop off to get some PlayStation Network points while I'm out, as well as getting my dinner. I think these squirrels are getting familiar with me, getting closer. One is going on my head, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, there's a set with the PlayStation Network sale on at the moment, and there's two games that I want to get that are really cheap, and that is the Turrican Anthology 1 and 2. They're really cheap, so I'm going to get them. Just taking care not to end up going through the mud. But yeah, they're on a really big sale, really deep sale, so I thought, they've been on my wish list for ages because I didn't really want to pay the £25 each that they were asking, but I think it's about £5 they're on sale for, which is actually really good value. So I thought, sod it, I'll get them. For those of you that don't know, Turrican is a bit like a Metroid. Stylish game, although it's a bit more of a shoot 'em up rather than an explorathon. Hell. Yeah, bit more of a shoot 'em up as opposed to an explore. You know, there's more exploration to be had in the Metroid games, but they're great fun. I had them on the Commodore 64 and loved them. Yeah, I think they were amongst the best looking games on the C64. I had them on the Amiga as well, and they were very good. So this collection, I think it has across here. I had the Amiga version and the console versions that come out, which were a little bit different. They really should do something, you know, about the drainage here, because this ain't going to improve so long as it keeps raining. And the more that it rains and the more that it starts to turn into this composted mud crap, the worse it's going to get. So they need to do something. They won't do anything about it. But yeah, so I thought I'd get that. Now, or them, should I say. Now on the subject of today, I could cover this in my first person shooters section, but I was also talking about other games. So today I was going to talk about why Doom is my favourite game of all time. Now, like I say, I have covered this to some extent in previous videos, but I've never actually dedicated an entire walkie-talkie to it. And it deserves it. After all, like I say, it's my favourite game of all time. So, yeah, I know there'll be a bit of repetition, but I genuinely think at this point that's going to be unavoidable unless I'm talking about something game related, specifically in the news. That's just going to be the way it is. So anyway, I will see you all when we get to the park, and we'll do a dive into my history with it, why I love it. As I say, it kind of was already talked about when I was talking about my favourite genre, but this is going to be specifically about why Doom is my favourite game. So, I will see you all in the park. Alright, let's get going. Oh. Oop, not birds up there. So, let's give a bit of context to this and the background to why Doom is my favourite game of all time. Now, when I say Doom, I mean the original Doom release. Ultimate Doom, with the Thy Flesh Consumed chapter included, but that included the original 3 Doom chapters anyway, so, or episodes as they call them. Thy Flesh Consumed was added on in preparation for Doom 2. Now the difficulty spike with that was notable, but we're jumping ahead. Let's try and keep it structured today. I'm going to really try. So it's the early 90s, and at this point, you know, I've got a good few years of gaming under my belt, and it's fair to say in the 8 and 16-bit generation, scrolling shooters and platformers were very much the dominating genre. You did have others which were good. You had some real-time strategy games. You had dungeon crawlers, adventure games interspersed, and you had some sort of flight sim type games in there as well. But for the most part, games were dominated by sort of platformers, arcade conversions, that kind of thing. And the 16-bit was basically taking the 8-bit and making it better. So, insofar as that was concerned, there wasn't really a big, massive step up in terms of the type of games you were playing. And it's probably fair to say around this time I was starting to get a little bit bored. I had the Mega Drive, and that gave me a bit of a shot in the arm. Games like Road Rash and Desert Strike, which were much better, you know, like Road Rash was like at that point for me personally the best cycling / racing game that there was. There was no two ways about it. Desert Strike was brilliant. That was like a sort of a action shoot 'em up in an isometric view rather than just being top down or being side-scrolling that, you know, other games of that genre were. So it was interesting, but there just wasn't enough. And as I'd got on through that Mega Drive era, you know, I've said before, I didn't have a Super Nintendo. And there were many different types of games on the Mega Drive. There were JRPGs, which I really wasn't into. But this isn't a critique of how anything was crap back then. It wasn't. I just played a lot of that genre to death. And so, you know, I was getting to that point where I wanted something different. I wanted something new. And I couldn't really find anything. Now, along comes, and I've said this before, I'm sure it was an episode of Games Master that went out late-ish at night. Because there's no way that back in the early 90s they would have shown game footage of Doom on Game Master's regular TV slot, which I think was around 6 p.m, maybe 6:30 p.m. They wouldn't have shown it back then. There was a lot of debate about violent video games which would explode with the release of Doom and with the release of another game, Carmageddon, in the UK. So there was no way any TV show was going to show anything approaching blood and guts and violence, even in a video game at that time. Now maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain this was a special edition of Games Master. Now it could have been another show, and I'm getting my wires crossed, but anyway, that's not important. What's important is the fact that I saw Doom on this show for the first time. Now I'd heard of it, but I'd never actually seen it. And never heard of id Software. Never heard of Wolfenstein 3D. Because you have to remember that back then, without internet, you were only exposed to things that magazines would show you. And I was only buying magazines for the console systems that I had. So if you factored in the fact that, you know, back then I was coming to the end of my time with the Commodore 64 and was playing on the Mega Drive. I mean, I was yet to get an Amiga. I would get an Amiga in and around this period. But I hadn't actually got it yet. When I saw Doom, again, didn't know who id Software were. If I ever saw an ad from it, I probably just skipped over it, because I was only interested in things that I could play, and I couldn't play that. Doom wasn't coming out on the Mega Drive at this point, and it wasn't coming out on the Commodore 64. And even when I got an Amiga, it wasn't coming out on the Amiga either. So it was just something I didn't even consider until I saw this TV program. We're just going to say it was Games Master, just for ease. And then I saw this game, and it was just like a revelation. It was like, this is exactly what I'd been wanting. I've spoken before about Scarabeus on the Commodore 64, which was a first-person well, they called it an action-adventure game. It was pretty much a early form of survival horror. And I'd always wanted more games like that because they were very immersive. You're seen through the eyes of the protagonist. That's what you're focusing on. You're not looking through, you've not got a side-on view. You've not got a top-down view. And therefore, this was novel, it was new. It was amazing. It's like today, we kind of take all this for granted. Back then, this was nothing short of remarkable. It was incredible. And so when I saw this, and as I say, it was that almost revelation. This is it. It was like, then I was into it. Then I'm like, I have to get this game. And imagine my crushing disappointment to note that this thing at that time was only out on PC. And there was no way at that stage I could afford a PC. I'd only just started working full time. I wasn't even getting minimum wage at that time. So it was out of the question that I could afford to buy a PC. And I thought that was it. Then, about a year later in my job, I got a pay rise. I've detailed this before. And I was suddenly able to have a bit of disposable income. So I'd worked out that if I took a small loan out to buy a PC, of how much I could afford to pay back that loan, I would easily be able to do it. So I went into, there was a PC store near where I was working, and I went into that store and talking to the guy in there, and I said, look, I said, I want a PC that can play Doom. Didn't know much about I didn't know anything about PCs back then. I played games on console and Commodore computers. It was plug and play, pretty much. So he was, telling me that I needed a 486 with so much RAM, blah, blah, blah. Kind of in a sound card. All this stuff's flying over my head. I'm like, why do I need to buy a sound card? Like, the sound comes through my TV on my consoles and my computers. He's like, yeah, but you need a monitor. I'm like, but I've got a TV. And he's like, no, you need a monitor. It's like, okay. And monitor doesn't have speakers as standard. And PC only has like a little internal speaker for beeps and boops. Like, oh. So I'm listening to all of this, just being like, dear God, this sounds like a right faff. But if I can play Doom, it'll be worth it. So I go in. He doesn't put the computer together. He like points out this one that will do everything I need it to do. It was some kind of 486 thingamajobbo. I don't even remember the make, to be absolutely honest. It could have been a HP. I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. And getting everything together, So I go to then finance it, and I can't. I had no credit history. I'd not taken out a loan for anything. At this point, I didn't have a credit card, nothing. So I couldn't. So I'd gone from being on the cusp of having what would have been probably an amazing piece of kit back then, to being like, oh well, I guess I'm not getting a bloody PC. I mean, unbeknownst to me, if I'd have gone to my bank, I probably could have got the money. But a finance company in and around that era, they were a bit more responsible in the early 90s. They just didn't give money out to anybody. You know, they didn't do the thing that led to the credit crunch back then. So I was really frustrated. And I was like, well, guess I'm never playing Doom. Guess I'm never going to be gaming on PC anymore. And then I think like fate plays a hand in things, doesn't it? How things work out. Sega announced the 32X. I think they'd already launched the Mega CD, and they announced the 32X. And one of the games coming out was Doom. Well, suddenly I'd gone from I'm never going to be able to play Doom to, oh my god, I'm going to be able to play Doom. Because the 32X was £150. That was doable. You know, I could save for a couple of months and be able to buy it and buy Doom. So when that came out, I got the 32X, saved up, got the 32X. That came with an updated Star Wars arcade, which was like the original arcade was like vector. These were like, was it filled vectors or was it polygon? Do you know, I can't even remember now, but it was great. Like the sound was brilliant. It was like such a step up from the Mega Drive in every department, the sound and graphics. And then there was Doom. And I mean, never played Doom on the PC or anything like that. I realised on the 32X there was, you know, there was some stuff missing, but I didn't know back then. And the window was reduced to allow for better frame rates. But again, I didn't know anything about this stuff. I'm just in heaven because finally I'm playing Doom. And I love that. Played through it, finished it, played through it again. And also around this time, I'd gotten an Amiga 1200. I did have an Amiga 600, and I got an Amiga 1200. My 600 broke. When you'd turn it on, it would just freeze. You couldn't do anything. So I bought a second-hand Amiga 1200. And of course that was a 32-bit Amiga. And that opened up more first-person shooters. The best of which I think was Gloom. That seemed to run the best. There was others, there was Fears. Which I think if you had a really powerful Amiga, i.e. not an out-of-the-box 1200, you could run that in a decent sized window and it was probably amazing looking, but I had to run it on something akin to a postage stamp to get any kind of performance. And there was Alien Breed 3D, and again, similar kind of problem. It looked great, but its performance wasn't brilliant. Now, I've got the Amiga 500 Mini that come out, and that will run those games, but it will run those games as if it was much more powerful Amiga. So I've actually been able to play those games, you know, at a decent sized screen and them looking great. That's more in recent times, but yeah. But none of them really stood up to Doom. Gloom for me was the closest. One of the things I would always say about that game is they lifted some sound effects from Aliens, like the sound of doors opening, and when you would shoot the bad guys, they'd make the same sound as when Dietrich gets attacked by one of the aliens, you know, and it drops down and grabs her and lifts her up, and that moment where it grabs her, the sound that she makes, they use that sample for when you were shooting the bad guys. But it was great. It actually ran really well on the 1200 in a decent sized screen, and it was quite fast paced. It was outstanding, but it wasn't Doom. But anyway, I played all these games to death, and in particular I'd completed Doom quite a few times. And then Sony announces the PlayStation, and Doom's coming out on there. And obviously the PlayStation was considerably more powerful than the 32X. The 32X was a bit of a cheat because it was marketed as being a 32-bit add-on for your console, but it was really two 16-bit processors running in tandem. PlayStation was the real deal, and that came over when you were playing Doom on PlayStation. It was something else. There was more levels in it. It actually came with Doom 2, and even though some of the more complex levels were omitted, there were some that were added in. Club Doom being a fun little secret level, and that still remains my favourite version to this day. I know it's not technically the best, that's the PC version, but as I've said before, the lighting and the sound, the music in particular, I think is superior to the PC. That's not a slight on the PC. I know in this day and age you have to qualify certain statements by, you know, saying, well, just because I say I love something more than I like something else, that doesn't mean to say that the other version is rubbish, because it isn't, clearly. And the music in the original Doom is clearly not rubbish at all. It's just Aubrey Hodges' music on the PlayStation was different, and it was haunting, and it was spooky, and you know, at times it was sinister. You had some tracks where, you know, you had there's one level where this entire soundtrack is like a demon, just a demon's voice, like chanting. It's incredible how, you know, effective and atmospheric it was. But both soundtracks work in different ways. But anyway, like I say, just needed to qualify that because I don't want people coming on me saying that I think the original soundtrack's garbage when that's not the case. So I'm playing the hell out of it on PlayStation. I'm loving every minute of it. In the job where I was working, we when I started there in the early 90s, they were using this ancient IBM System 36 mainframe, and they updated it to PCs. So everyone in the office, you know, each of our offices had brand spanking new PCs, and they were like first gen Intel Pentiums, and we were running Windows 3.11 initially. I don't know. Yeah, they were Pentiums. But we had 3.11 very briefly, and then We upgraded to Windows 95. And there was a computer shop, and they were selling a box copy of Doom, Thy Flesh Consumed, on floppy disk. They were selling it really cheap, and it was because the box had sunlight damage to it. It had obviously at some point been near a window, so like half the box colour was lighter than the other. Now obviously I didn't have a PC at home, but I thought, well, you know, lunch hour at work, you know, if it's weather's bad, because I always used to pop out at lunch, get out of the office. But I thought, well, if the weather's really bad, let's just see. So I bought it, and I had my own office at the other end of the building. It was like the main office, the boss's office was next to that, the owner's office was upstairs, and mine was at the other end of the building near the kitchen. And I had a door, because I was like doing numbers, inputting the finances and stuff like that. So, well, it was a terrible idea giving me Doom on PC, giving myself Doom on PC, should I say. And yeah, let's just say sometimes I wasn't playing it during my lunch break, during my lunch hour. It would spill over a little bit sometimes, but I was playing it without sound, obviously. And I absolutely loved it. It was the first time I'd played it on PC, and so I was seeing it run like full screen with all of the seeing it run full screen. I'm using keyboard and mouse, and that was the first time I'd used keyboard and mouse in a first-person shooter. And I was all over the place at first. Couldn't get to grips with this damn control system. I was used to joysticks and joypads. I'm like, what the hell is this? Well, I got used to it, and I loved it. But still, I didn't have a PC at home, so I could never play it in its full glory, and it would be a number of years. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. I'm forgetting. I'd been there a few years, and there was a spare PC knocking about. And the owner of the business, he was a great guy. Really, you know, I got on with him really well, and I liked him. He was a good man. And we had this spare PC, and it didn't have anything all singing, all dancing. It didn't even have any RAM in it. But I just said one day, it'd been lying around for months. I said, can I, you know, and I didn't say, can I have it? I was talking to him about, you know, tech. He was into tech, to some extent. You know, he was the ones that was like, he'd driven the thing of getting new computers in, and he wanted like everybody on board with it. He wanted everyone on board with all of this stuff, because, you know, he knew that's where it was all going. And we were just in conversation, and I was like, you know, I just play on the PlayStation at home now. I said, yeah, my Amiga's out of date. I can't really do an awful lot with it. And he was like, take this home. And it was one of the spare Pentiums. Like, I can't afford it. He goes, oh, I'm not selling it yet. I'm telling you to take it home. So I did. Of course, it didn't work because there was no bloody RAM in it, and I didn't know. Now, we had an IT company at the time that we bought this stuff from, and I phoned him up. I said, it's beeping at me. He goes, how many beeps? So I told him, he said, he's got no RAM. So I remember buying 2 sticks of RAM, and I have no idea how many megabytes the sticks were. Probably 16, maybe 32 megabytes, I don't know. It was like £50 anyway. So and I was like, I'll have to put it through like the company account. So I was like, I'm gonna have to pay, you know, have the company invoice me and I'll pay for it. Oh, but the guy who owned the business, he was like, no chance. So I got the RAM as well. So now, you know, and I had a sound card, bought a sound card, and I paid for that myself. And I was good to go. And whoop, got a leaf to the head then. So I got it set up, bought a monitor. It was a 15-inch monitor. Again, I paid for that. I saved up and paid for it. I got myself my first PC set up. This would have been around 97, 96 maybe. What would it be? No, it might have been 95. I'm not sure. Anyway, got it set up. Some speakers. Put Doom on and started to play Doom for the first time on PC properly. You know, not having to keep looking over my shoulder, so I didn't get in trouble for playing games when I should have been working. And it was great. It was brilliant. Just playing full on Doom for the first time. It was fantastic. But it was funny. Still had a soft spot for the PlayStation version. I still kept going back to the PlayStation version of the game. There was just something about it. I got it for Christmas alongside the PlayStation from my mum and dad. So there was a sentimental attachment to it, but it was just so good. There we are. And then fast forward, it's getting quite grim actually, the sky, isn't it? Just looking now. And then when the PlayStation 2 come out, I remember playing the PlayStation Doom on that, but you could improve the texture quality. It was alright. It just blurred the pixels a little bit. The problem was, and I don't know if it was just down to my PlayStation 2 or whatever, but periodically it would crash. So that was a bit of a shame. But the other thing I had for the PlayStation version of Doom was Final Doom, which was brilliant. They'd done some improvements to the quality of the game. They'd done a pretty damn good job with it. Yeah, that was awesome. And then coming right up to date, I suppose, with playing it on the current systems, playing it on PC and consoles now. There's no real difference between the two unless you're going into the area of mods, where obviously with the PC it's slightly better storage wise. You've got more the ability to store more mods, They're a little bit more limited on console. They're not present at all on the Switch, but on PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X you do have some mods that you can get on there, and on PC you can get on with it a lot easier. Just brilliant, love it. I've played it on the Saturn. There's a video of that up on my channel. Frame rate was absolutely horrific and not a very good version of Doom at all on the Saturn. I've played a Super Nintendo version of it now. I'm sure there's a video of that up on my channel from the earlier days. And yeah, never played it on the 3DO. But when I'm saying I've played it on the Saturn and playing it on the Super Nintendo, and this, I've played it on hardware that I've had the hardware for, the real hardware, not emulated. I went through a period a few years ago of like filling in the gaps in my gaming experience of systems that I didn't own. But yeah, and the Super Nintendo one, actually, for its day and for considering the system it's on, they did a pretty impressive job. So that's sort of my history, and probably how I fell into it, really. Then my history sort of goes, along the lines of just getting into it at a time, weirdly enough, when I felt I was coming out of the gaming. And as I say, that's probably the reason why I love it so much, why it is my favourite game. But it's not just because it reinvigorated my interest in playing video games at a time where I was starting to get a little bit bored of just going through the same thing, playing the same thing over and over again. Just 1 second. Sure I've got everything. It's also a bloody good game. It's so well made and designed. The reason I'll prefer the original Doom over Doom 2, I felt the verticality, the vertical levels in Doom 2 didn't sit too well with me because you couldn't see down, but you could be attacked from something underneath, because technically it's not underneath you, it's like an illusion. It's like a 2.5D game as opposed to a 3D game. So you're never looking up or down in the vanilla version. Obviously with stuff like Jeezy Doom, you can. But to me that's cheating. But you couldn't see. And in the more vertical levels that Doom 2 had back then, I just couldn't get on with it, some of the levels. And I didn't really have that with Doom. And that's not to say that I dislike Doom 2, I love it. But just between the two, Doom edges it in the level design for me. And for me, it's pretty much perfection. The level design, the gameplay, everything. It's just pretty much perfection. And I love it. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty much all I've got with it really. I've sort of gone through it, what I like, and well, there's nothing really I don't like. So, nothing really at all that I don't like about it. It's as close to gaming perfection for me. Now obviously I've not covered the newer versions of Doom, because they're not the reason I love Doom, and that was what the purpose of this video was. So anyway, it's starting to get a bit grim weather-wise, so I shall call it there, and I'll see you hopefully tomorrow, so I'll catch you then.